Hello, and a very warm welcome to Merton's Virtual Open Day and to our live session with tutors in the social sciences subjects. So I wonder if I could just start with some introductions and then we'll give you a brief overview of what we'll be covering in this afternoon session. My name is Jane Gover. I'm Merton College's tutor for admissions and senior tutor. We also have with us one of our tutors in law.
Hello, I'm Natalie Markova. Nice to meet you.
And one of our economics tutors who's going to talk about both economics and management and PPE.
Hi, I'm Basil Tarbush.
Thank you. So what we'll do today is just talk a little bit about what it's like to study these various subjects at Merton. So highlighting in particular some things that might be a little bit different or unique compared to some of the other Oxford colleges. We'll then go on and talk about the application process. I know that's an area of interest to many of you thinking about applying at this time of year. So thinking a little bit about the kind of the UCAS personal statement and the UCAS form more broadly. Some additional elements to the application processes, for example, pre-interview tests, and then thinking ahead to the interview itself, and the tutors will be able to talk a little bit about the sorts of approaches that they take and what they're going to be looking for. It's possible for you to submit questions live through the Slido chat. So if you're on the Merton page of the university's Open Day portal, there's a Slido chat box. You just need to hit the red button for the live streams. Those questions will be sent in to me. I'll keep an eye out as those come in and field them in as we go through the discussions this afternoon. I can see we've already got a couple coming in now. So if I'm glancing off to the side, that's what I'm doing. And we'll just pick those up as we go through the talk. So I think without further introductions, if we could perhaps start with law, and Dr. Markova, if you could just talk us a little bit about law specifically at Merton.
Okay. So at Merton, we have a cohort size of about 6 to 7 students, which is somewhere in the middle. So at Oxford, different colleges will have cohorts between 4 and 10, let's say. And we've found over the years that actually having 6 or 7 works really well, both for classes and tutorials to make sure that people get to know each other and can work together in pairs and larger groups and smaller groups. So I would say that's really one of the strengths of our program. We are also very keen for vertical integration. So we always make sure that we get the freshers as soon as they come in, introduced to second years who will be their college parents and the finalists, but also further up to our postgraduates. And I think that's the same for what Basil will be talking about. So you would also have graduate mentors who are there to really help you throughout the process to answer questions that you may not necessarily want to ask your tutors, whether it's subject specific or lifestyle specific or anything else. Merton is very fortunate also to have a number of resources from hardship funds all the way through to scholarships, and details of these for law you can find on the website. We have 3 tutors in law who are in-house, so to speak. One of them is currently the Dean of the Law Faculty, Minnie Wishart. The other one is Professor Jenny Payne, who will be teaching you trusts. And the third one is me, who will be teaching you contract law, Roman law, and land law. So we'll be seeing quite a bit of us. But at the same time, we also mix that up with seeing external experts in other colleges. So we have long-standing arrangements with other colleagues who we trust and who are really the best that Oxford has to offer. So we're very proud of this mixture to being exposed to the in-house people and to other experts from other colleges. There is a lot of student support, both from your peers and from the college itself, and I'm sure we'll get onto that later. And just maybe a final thing to mention at this stage is that there is also a Holsbury Law Society, which organizes a number of events from subject teas to dinners to annual lecture, where you'll be able to meet other lawyers, alumni, and also some very distinguished speakers such as judges, academics, etc., etc. I should probably stop there because I can see that Jane is jumping in with the other subject.
Thank you, Natalie. So the mentoring scheme is something that Merton has kind of that sits across most of our subjects actually at the undergraduate level. And I think they're particularly valuable for helping with some of the kind of more broader study skills support, as Natalie said, not necessarily thinking about your subject content. And we are very conscious with the last couple of years of disruption through COVID that this is a fantastic resource that we're able to offer, whether it's essay writing or how to take lecture notes effectively or how to organise your time. So I think that is a good scheme and one that also is available in a number of other subjects. So I wonder if I could now hand over to Dr. Tarbush, who is going to talk to us both about economics and management and PPE.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Jane. So I think a lot of the things that Natalie just talked about apply in for economics and management and PPE. So the graduate mentor scheme we have for those subjects. Generally, I mean, part of what I think is that the students find helpful about the mentor scheme is that they get to talk to someone who has recently been through similar things to the things that they're going through, and so it just helps to kind of get advice from someone who is just on the ground with you. And I think that a lot of the students in PPE and ENM have benefited from that program. Things that we organize at Merton, actually, we have the what we call ethics and society events. So we invite professors or sort of practitioners, like professionals from outside of academia to talk to us about whatever it is that they're either researching or doing. So recently we've had, someone from the IMF, we've invited some MPs and so on. And I think it's a sort of thing that, of course, all the undergraduate students are invited to participate in. And, you get to meet people from outside and basically people that might be doing things that you will be interested in doing later on. So I think that's one of those things that's really great for the Merton sort of PPE and ENM community. Of course we have book grants and funding for summer projects and that sort of thing. Not too long ago we had my undergraduate students do some of the summer projects and they're really quite good. But maybe I won't get into them because there's time. And maybe I'll just finish off with saying that we have a really cool team of really interesting people on the PPE and ENM teams. So we have Karina Senon-Boveda, who studies democratization and Latin American politics, and there's Patricia Thornton, who does politics of China. There's Umut Baisan for the philosophy on the philosophy team, who does philosophy of mind and metaphysics, and Simon Saunders, who does philosophy of physics, and all sorts of areas. Of course, there's my closest colleague, Professor Nathan Lane, who is an economic historian and who studies comparative development and political economy. And on the economics and management team, there's Kate Blackmon, who does organization performance, gender diversity issues, and she's just this incredible resource for case studies and anecdotes and examples to draw on. So she's like very, very fun to talk to on that sort of thing. So it's a really great team. Go Merton.
Thank you. And Basil, could you just tell us how many students we take each year for PPE and ENM typically?
Yes, I'm sorry, I forgot about that.
No,
so we typically have a cohort of 4 ENM students per year and 8 PPE students. And we'll probably get to that later on in this session. But for class sizes, I think it tends to work quite well for tutorials and also PPE and ENM students tend to kind of have quite a bit of interaction through economics and so on. So you end up kind of belonging to a slightly large-ish community. I mean, 12 isn't that large, but in terms of tutorials, you end up having quite targeted small group things. It works well.
Thank you. I think that sense of the number of tutors in both, well, in both tutors areas and the cohort size gives you an idea of the kind of the way in which we're really able to support our students as individuals in their academic and wider journeys. There's also a question, if I may, just very quickly before we move on to the application process, asking about whether Merton takes all course 2 options in law, specifically looking for law with European law.
Yes, the answer is yes, we do. So the decision to take any given candidate for law is made by Merton as such on the strength of your application. And if I can just jump in, a lot of people think that it's impossible to get into Merton. That is certainly not true. What we find is that a lot of people are so afraid of Merton that they don't apply. Please do not fall into that category. We'd love to see you for an interview, and we would love to give your application proper consideration. But coming to the course 2 or the year abroad option, that decision is made by us and the law faculty, because there's only a limited number of places we have for each year abroad sort of cohort. And so that would be made partly by the law faculty and also based on a language test that you would be sitting during your interview process. But perhaps one last thing to say here, even if you did apply for a law course with a year abroad, and then let's say that the language test doesn't go that well, or the law faculty does not have a place for you on this 4-year course rather than the 3-year course, we would still be able to offer you a place on the regular 3-year course if you were good enough. So don't worry too much. If you feel like you want to give it a go, please do, because it will not prejudice your application in any way. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. We did have a question earlier about whether it was true that Merton had a serious academic reputation. I think possibly just picking up from those comments, our students do amazingly well. They tend to get very, very strong finals outcomes. But what I would say is that actually the intake is just the same as any intake in any other college. We have a very diverse student body. We take about 90 students a year from all kinds of different educational and country backgrounds. I think that, you know, what we would hope is that we have really great support structures in place. We do ask our students to kind of really, you know, make the most of the opportunities that they've been given with a place here. So they do tend to be hardworking and really enthusiastic and passionate about their subjects, but I hope that helps. There's also, if I may, quickly a question about economics. Question is whether economics students get to interact with students from other colleges, whether it might be through lessons or classes.
Yes, yes, they do. So the way things work is you'll be taking lectures in your department. So in economics, for example, you might well, rather, if you're studying PPE, then you might go to lectures. The lectures will be for anyone who is taking PPE, but also in principle you can attend the lectures in whatever subject you're interested in. Those lectures are things that kind of you have to decide to go to and you know, take in all the information, that sort of thing. But then on a sort of day-to-day basis or week-on-week basis, really you're working towards your tutorials. So your tutorials, you meet with your tutors. Typically they'll be your tutors at your college, but not necessarily. So a lot of sort of the students in their first year and second year will have their tutors in economics with me or with Nathan, my colleague. Now, the tutorials will sort of track the lectures and will cover essentially the syllabus that's being taught in the lectures, but it won't necessarily overlap perfectly. So in terms of interacting with people from other subjects or whatever it is, you'll see people from other subjects on a day-to-day basis in your college or outside of your college, in the quad, in your dining hall, in your whatever, on a social level. And then also you might see people from other subjects outside of economics or say within PPE in your lecture, lecture rooms and so on and so forth. Now, if you were really interested in, say, you know, maths lectures or something like that, you could go to maths lectures. There's absolutely nothing stopping you from, you know, going in and doing that sort of thing, for example. Yeah, and there are sometimes courses that are offered that will kind of join two departments. I'm not sure that this is still on offer this year, although it used to exist. We used to have, for example, a philosophy and economics of the environment course, and it was partly taught by philosophers and partly by economists. So that kind of thing does happen as well. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Lots of opportunities to get together with students from other colleges, I think, probably in both areas through all kinds of different sorts of teaching. Thank you. I wonder if we could possibly move on now to think a little bit about the application stage. And again, we've got some questions coming in, which I'll pick up as we go through. The UCAS form, obviously, that gives us quite a lot of information. So students' personal statement, GCSE and A-level kind of results or predictions or equivalent qualifications, plus the school or college reference. So I know that one thing that students are often a little bit worried about is the UCAS statement and how to make that as kind of strong as possible, particularly bearing in mind that it's not just Oxford that you may be applying to. So I wonder if we could just start with law and the sorts of things that you might be looking for in a UCAS personal statement.
There's no secret recipe to start off with. There is no one ingredient we are looking for. But I think if you want to turn the tables, so to speak, what we want to see from your personal statement is that you have thought about it. You have thought about why you want to study law. And I think that's true for any subject, right? So do not try to treat it as a resume of everything you have done or read or should have read or should have done. We are not looking for Lord Sumption in his 20s or 9 or 18-year-old. We are really looking to see a little bit of you. Bear in mind, we have a lot of data already. We'll have a lot of information about your performance at school, obviously bearing in mind that the pandemic would have upset a lot of that. We will have a reference, which will hopefully explain objectively a lot of the circumstances in which you are taking those exams and who you are and your potential. And then the personal statement is really the final element that introduces you as a person to us. Who are you? What motivates you to study law? What motivates you to come and actually consider, in my subject, the legal questions around you? Is there something that triggered this interest, for example? Is this something that you were always interested in, or is this something that only just recently came to you? Have you read something, for example, that you found really interesting or really infuriating? This is the sort of thing that we are looking for. I hope that helps.
Thank you. And how about for economics and management and/or PPE?
So I think once again, I'll be repeating some of the things that Natalie has just said. So we do have a lot of information on you. We know, so for PPE and ENM, you'll have to take the TSA test. My apologies. You'll have to take the TSA test, and we'll be able to see your entire school records. We have your reference letters, etc. And of course, in terms of metrics, if you like, we already have a lot of that sort of thing. So the personal statement really is kind of more our window into who you are, what you're like. We get to know you better in some sense through the personal statement. You can tell us about exactly like your interest in the subject, or if you're a champion unicyclist or whatever it is. And that gives us just kind of, a sense of what you're interested in, who you are, and that's the extra information really that we're getting out of the personal statement that isn't really already in your school record. So feel free to kind of talk about those things. That's all I would say there.
If I can jump in, Jane, remember that Oxford is a very personal experience. You are not only taught through lectures. Indeed, lectures are secondary for us. You are taught primarily through tutorials, where it'll be you and me or another tutor and another student. That's it, really. So in a way, what we are trying to find out is your motivation, because that will partly translate into who you will be as a student when you come and become one of these 2 students in front of a tutor. And very often the tutor will be interviewing you. So really that's sort of that's the rationale behind it. It's because it's such a personal experience for you and us. That's why we are interested in who you are as well.
Yeah, I think that sense of kind of motivation and passion for a subject is something that tutors would say kind of uniformly across all subjects. And I think actually because of that kind of idea that it's a window into your interests, really, really important, to be honest. So, you know, talk about what is genuinely interesting to you, talk about what you really have read, not least because it's not impossible at interview that might be the starting point for a kind of an initial conversation. So you definitely don't want to get caught out. And I think the other thing, there's a few questions here about, you know, how important is it, or what if I say this? I think it's, you know, the personal statement is not a make or break element of the application because it is only one piece of information. So it also does have to, of course, fit for whichever universities you're applying to as well. Fantastic. So we've just begun to touch on the pre-interview tests with the mention of the TSA. If we just perhaps stick to that before we move on to law, I wonder if you could just say something, Dr. Tabish, about, again, what it is, the sort of approaches it's asking, and how it is that students might possibly prepare for that.
Yes, absolutely. So the TSA, so it has an essay section. The essay section is usually involves I don't know, fairly difficult questions, actually, particularly because I think you only have like half an hour to answer them or something, and it'll be a page long, and it's something like should the voting age be reduced to 10 or something, 10 years old or something, or whatever. And so you'll have to kind of think about all the possible consequences of making a policy shift like that, and so on. And it really, we're looking at sort of, whether you write well, whether the thoughts are well organized. And that's pretty much it. I mean, given that you only have half an hour, we can't, we can't expect that much in some sense, but it's just to get a sense of how you express yourself and whether your thoughts are well organized. The other part of the TSA is multiple choice based, or more multiple choice based. So for example, you'll read a graph and you'll have to correctly identify what the graph is really telling you, for example, or something like that. There is a way to practice for this test. If you go to the TSA website, there are plenty of past papers that are still posted up there, so you can have a sense of what the tests are like, and actually train yourself. And I would advise to train yourself. It is definitely something that you can prepare for, and you don't want to be doing it for the first time. The first time that you do it. So yeah.
I think that's probably a top tip, is have a look at what we've done previously and give them a go. I wonder if you could now talk about the LMAT and law.
Very similar format, really. So you also have a multiple choice section. And again, I would strongly encourage you to practice. The reason for that is because it's not a test of your knowledge. Remember, for law, we are not expecting you to have studied law as such, which is quite unusual. And if anything, actually, we find that not studying law really makes it easier for you to start with law at university level. But as a result, we are not going to be testing you on any legal knowledge or legal thinking or anything like that. Instead, it's more about logic. If you read a short paragraph, are you able to answer logical questions based off that paragraph or the argument in that paragraph? So really trying to get comfortable with the format is really important for the multiple choice. So that will give us 1 score, which we then have in addition to everything else. And we'll be comparing that to the average score across all the people that year that have taken the LMAT exam. The other thing, the other half, is an essay again. And just like with economics, what you basically do is that you get a choice of questions, and you choose one, and you have usually about half an hour to answer. Again, the answers will be between half a page to a page, and we know you don't have access to any resources. It's really just you and your immediate response to that question. My advice would be read the question carefully and make sure you're answering the question actually asked. Don't panic. Take 5 minutes to plan your answer. We actually find that sometimes shorter but better written answers get much higher mark than long, endlessly argued or misargued answers. So really, it's more about the quality of your argument. A, are you responding to the question in front of you? And B, are you able to organize your thoughts and to structure the answer well? Once you, obviously, computer can't yet mark an essay like that. So if you were to apply to Oxford, for example, we would get all these essays of the students who have applied to us, and we would mark them in-house. There is a lot of training that goes to the markers, so you don't have to worry about that. A lot of them are marked by 2 or 3 people, and then the scores are compared. So there's really quite a rigorous system in place. And then there will be a second score we get out of LNAT that again would be comparing with the average across the whole year group in Oxford this time. And that's how it really works. So it gives us 2 different insights into how you can think and how you can answer questions, because obviously essay writing is a big part of what you would be doing in Oxford. So for us, it's really important that you can actually argue quite well. At least we know there is time pressure, there's stress and everything else. We take that all into account. But if you really can't provide, even if it's short, but coherent answer to a question, that's something that is a red flag to us.
Thank you. And I think then if we just kind of move on and talk about the interviews, again, what I would stress is the amount of information that tutors have to make shortlisting decisions, and all of these components are taken into account. And there are also in all subjects kind of layers of kind of cross-college or university-wide kind of checks and balances to make sure that the systems are working in the same way across all of the different colleges. So by the time we come to do shortlisting, as I say, all the UCAS information, written work tests, then they'll make some decisions about who to call for interview. So I wonder if we can just briefly talk about the interview structure again, specifically whether the kinds of approaches that tutors are taking, the sorts of things that they might students might see in an interview. There are, of course, specimen questions again on the university's website, so you can have a look at those. But if we start with PPE and economics and management, just a little bit about the interviews themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. So at Merton, the interviews for, I'll start with PPE, are usually divided by subject. So there, if you're applying for PPE and you get an interview, you'll have 3 interviews. And each interview is about 20 or 30 minutes. And so basically you'll get to meet each set of tutors. One thing I have to really stress is we're not interested in your knowledge of the subject. Many people will never have done economics or philosophy or whatever before applying, and that's absolutely fine. There's no test of knowledge really. What we're more interested in is how you think and how you approach new problems. So for economics, for example, we'll typically give you a description of some economic or social interaction or description of a market, and we'll try to work out through some discussion and usually a little bit of maths what we should expect to see in this market that we've just described, and possibly work out how we can intervene through policy, for example, or something like that. Partly we're looking to see how you can translate from reasoning verbally about the problem, turning it into something that is maths-y, and then looking at the maths, deriving some conclusion, and then translating it back into words, or something like that. That's kind of how it works on the economic side. We don't expect you to know answers sort of from the get-go. It's really a discussion, and we're kind of like leading you through it, but we're absolutely never expecting someone to say, well, clearly this is what needs to happen, kind of thing. And so this is kind of why typically it's pretty important through the interview to kind of be thinking out loud and to kind of, let us know how you're thinking about something. It's absolutely fine to change your mind halfway through. It's absolutely fine to change your mind 3 times throughout the interview. That's fine. As long as kind of we can keep track of like how you're reasoning through the problem. For philosophy and politics, I can't say as much, but I can say, for example, that in philosophy, at Merton anyway, the interviews tend to be based around some logical argument, and you need to kind of like find whether there are any flaws in the argument or that sort of thing. I think things can be pretty variable in politics, so I will maybe not say too much about it because I'm less confident. I haven't actually sat through one of the politics interviews. On the other hand, I can tell you a little bit about the management interviews for those of you who are interested in economics and management. So for management, typically you'll be given something to read. It'll be a case study, like about some company there'll be real articles, about some company that does, I don't know, mittens or something, and they're having trouble with their sales, or there's an issue with the supply chain or something. And the management tutor will try to discuss possible things that this company could do, either through its internal organization or through organizing how it sources its materials, or etc., or how it advertises to consumers or whatever, in order to kind of fix its problems and sort of talk you through all the possible consequences of what might happen. And here, you're asked a little bit to kind of like rely on your imagination for what possible things you could do to intervene, or say you were the CEO, what would you do in this situation, and that sort of thing. What challenges might you find if you follow one particular decision or not, or that sort of thing. It's a fun interview. Anyway, I'll stop here.
Thank you. I think lots of nodding heads there as well. I think the sort of idea of having something new that you won't have seen before, that the tutors can talk through and understand how you're sort of thinking and how you're approaching it. And when you get stuck, because pretty much everybody will get stuck, how you get unstuck and how you work from that. And although we do recognise that you'll be nervous, but actually quite a lot of students say that they do after the event have found it quite an enjoyable experience, and it sort of mirrors the tutorial that we give in teaching in that it's a kind of conversation and a dialogue, hence the importance of kind of thinking out loud. Would you like something about law?
Yeah, sure. I mean, a lot, I can repeat a lot of the things that have been said. Pretty much everything I think is relevant for us, but I'm going to just add a few bits that are law specific. Just to reiterate, thinking on your feet, thinking out loud, thinking clearly, changing your mind, absolutely fine. If there is a new argument that is thrown in, play with it. It really is about how you can think in the abstract, how you can think on your feet. So there'll be 2 interviews that you will get at Merton, both with Merton tutors. One is usually along the lines of the tutor will give you a set of facts. Something has happened, there is a problem, and you are asked, if this was, for example, your own country and you were to create a new law, what would the law be and why? Right? And this can be pretty much any situation, something that you have not heard before. We create new situations every year. And a second interview will be more focused on a real law or real case. So you'll be given an excerpt, let's say a few sections or a few articles from an existing law or part of a decided case. It doesn't matter what it is. It'll be something quite obscure, so please don't worry about learning all the laws that you can get your hands on. And what you will be asked is to consider how that particular rule or law that you have in front of you would apply to any given situation that you'll be given in the interview. So one is textual analysis, the other one is more of a sort of logical and the rights and wrongs analysis, or in practical sense. It's quite likely you'll be asked about your personal statement, and it's quite likely there'll be a lot of questions that would never occur to you, but actually that's part of the fun. All of that will be based around thinking about what the law should be, what the law can be, and what are some of the downsides, if you like. So if you create a rule that orders everyone to wear their hair long, for example, are there any downsides to that? Can you think of anything that could actually be lost if we have such a law? So, that's the sort of questions that we'll be asking you.
And I presume you don't want the answer hairdressers, which is what I would think.
Well, we actually don't want any one given answer. We're really, really much more interested in how you are thinking than the final answer you come to. So I think it is really quite similar to economics and PP and management.
Perfect, thank you. I'm a little bit conscious that we've slightly overrun, but I wonder if we could just do some quick fire questions as we come to an end. So one is, are there mooting opportunities at Merton?
Plenty. Both the law faculty and Merton, actually, but Merton is very, very active. It will not force you into additional mooting, but it will certainly create a lot of opportunities, yes.
Thank you. I'll pass this one to Dr. Tarbush. If I indicate Merton as my preferred college, will I be likely to be interviewed by Merton tutors, or is it up to chance?
So there is an element of chance. Part of this, what the system does is when you apply, I think there's some reallocation that happens among the candidates. So it's very likely that you would be interviewed at Merton, but in order to ensure basically that there's a good distribution of quality across the different colleges, and to ensure kind of fairness in the level of difficulty in some sense across colleges, people do sometimes get reallocated. So yeah, there is that little element of chance.
And that's one of the mechanisms that the university uses to make sure that the college you apply to doesn't affect the outcome of your application. I've got one about Scottish hires, which I'm very happy to take if that's okay. I'm not sure which subject this applicant is thinking about applying for. The question is, do they need 3 advanced hires? The website says we can take 2 with an additional hire. I think if you have opportunity to do 3 hires, we would expect you to do that. One of the reasons for asking about an additional hire, if you're only able to take 2 within your own educational setting, is because the courses are intense here. There is a lot of work, and one of the things that we will be wanting to see is that somebody is able to kind of manage the volume and workload of their study. So if you can take 3, take 3. If not, and you can only take 2 advanced hires and extra, then let us know that that's the case, so that we're aware that it's due to your kind of educational setting rather than kind of personal choice, and that's absolutely fine. So that's a bit of a whistle-stop tour through the subjects and through the application processes. Again, just to emphasise that there is a huge amount of information on which we make decisions. It's all looked at in the context of your own individual circumstances too. So the kind of school you've been at, your kind of, your kind of individual personal circumstances in relation to socioeconomic data. So when we make decisions, lots of information, and we really are just striving to take the students who have the best academic ability and potential overall. So that really brings us to the end of our session. I hope you found it helpful to have an opportunity to hear from our tutors about the subjects at Merton. There is a huge amount of information also on both the college's website and on the university's website. And if you'd like to, you can also request a Merton College Open Day pack, either via our own website or again, the university's Open Day website on the Merton page, and we'll be very happy to send that to you. If having done that, you've still got questions, then by all means, drop us a line and we're very, very happy to help. So thank you very much for attending. We would like to wish you all the very best, and hope you found today's session useful. Thank you. Goodbye.